So there's this weird recent mentality ever since Beyond Light came out, and even after the changes to it, that Stasis is this like undefeatable monster of a subclass series. And I don't know if I'm crazy or maybe I'm just deluded, but I really don't feel like this is the case, and I'm gonna talk about why I feel like this isn't the case, and I'm even gonna talk about how I feel like you could probably operate against it, and I'm gonna go through step by step and kind of elaborate on how I particularly tend to play against it and how I feel like the various playstyles, because maybe your playstyle may not align with mine 100%, can go and take steps and approach the manner to combat and even defeat stasis outright, with stasis or without stasis. That's a lot of stasis, I said. And I haven't even scripted this video because I feel like I don't need to script this video. The whole countering stasis thing comes naturally to me. So I'm going to give you my raw, like, non-processed thoughts here. Although I might have to, like, retake a couple audio takes because I'm really bad at that. But let's get a few things out of the way first. Number one, you can't expect to always win. There's always, it's just the degree of randomness in Destiny with how strong the abilities are now. If you wanted your, like, I can win 100% chance, then you should have played in year one. And a lot of the people who are complaining about Stasis right now are also the same people who complain about year one Destiny 2. Which, you know, it's like two sides of the fence. You're playing for both of them, you're playing against both of them. It's like either you want, you know, full meme town, you know, haha, I got you this time, maybe next time you'll get me, or you went to super hardcore shooter, which Destiny is not that, and I recommend you go somewhere else if that's what you're looking for. So I'm going to begin with talking about how Beyond Light and or Stasis changed the Crucible in regards from a flow perspective. And what do I mean by flow? I mean the way that the game operates naturally, the natural progressive state of a Crucible match, and just how things tend to go from piece to piece or point to point, like point A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, step 1, step 2, etc., with Stasis in the mix. So, as I discussed literally like 10 seconds ago, I talked about how the abilities add a very high degree of randomness and unpredictability to the game. That's okay. Now, your next thought right now might be, okay, with that information, that means I should play a little slower, which is both, it's true and false. You can play slower, but it's not necessarily required, and this is because you also have abilities. You know, they may not be free guaranteed instant freezes a lot of the time, like your glacier or your, you know, I don't know, cold snap I think is what that grenade is called. I call it frostbolt because it's funny, because I played WoW, not referencing another person or anything like that, but or, you know, your glacial dive combination that really needs to go. And the thing about that is, I digress, I'm not going to get into that right now. In any case, you still have abilities on these other classes, and you have synergy with these classes. They all have a gimmick, just like Stasis' gimmick is oftentimes freeze people, and there's also something else on top of that. You know, like, for example, Behemoth's gimmick is that it's a very, very hypermobile class. It adds the mobility to the Titan that the Titan players have wanted for a long time. Instead of giving you Twilight Garrison, they gave you something, I feel, that is like 5 times better than that, and much more flexible. The Shadebinder, or Shadebinder as some people may know it as, it has this gimmick of it's a very much Frost Mage aesthetic, where you're casting spells finally. You're finally casting spells. And you know, that one's a little bit more defensive of a class, I have to be honest, although you see people use the staff a lot more aggressively. Moving on. And again, we have the Revenant, as I explained in the video with Pattycakes, that if you weren't there for that, Hunter's playstyle is fundamentally always been centered around getting very quick kills with a very low cost. Things like the Glacial Dive combo, which is mostly as strong as it is in part due to the Fissure fragment, I think it is, which that's the thing you should probably be angry about, not the combo itself. But again, the data here is to be released, and you know, I don't have all the numbers on this. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't have the magic bullet, and I don't have the magic answer, so flame me in the comment section if you want. And that's the whole gimmick with that, is like you get this, what's it, Mask of Bacchus, and there's this element of mobility, but it's like very much expendable, like, you know, quick hit, quick exit kind of strategy with the Revenant class. So hopefully that kind of breaks down a little bit as to how you could work against these classes. Now that I've talked about the classes and their individual gimmicks of Stasis and I guess their lore or fantasy approach. Let's talk about the average playstyle of how Stasis generally is ran. Now, a lot of the time, it depends on what the stack is. If you're running into like a lot of Revenants or a lot of Behemoths in quick play or comp or something, it can definitely snowball into a lot of repetition. And I think Drewski is the one who said it on his stream a couple of days ago. He mentioned the point that it's not that it's like necessarily broken, it's that it's repetitive. In Destiny, repetition is a horrible experience 10 out of 10 times. And it can quickly feel like it's snowballing out of control when you have, 3 Behemoths in a comp match all sliding at you at Mach 10 and, giving you the 1-2 kangaroo with the shoddy melee, and it can really feel like, wow, this is really unfun. And I feel like you could also say the same thing for 3 top dons or 3 bottom tree striker titans, or 3 bubble titans, or 3 arc staff hunters, or, the list goes on. Stacking of anything has always been a problem in Destiny, which is why it's banned in, like, the community competitive rule sets, and vice versa. I get a little carried away off on another tangent there, but I'm going to revert back to what I was talking about. The average playstyle of a Stasis player depends entirely, I would honestly say, based on what platform you're on and what classes you're running into. So, because like the Glacial Dive combo is really, really strong and it's very known right now, and I have a feeling it's going to be getting a very aggressive nerf very soon, you see a lot of people doing this in doorways with the Revenant subclass. Now, I'll start off here, and I'll say it outright. That even gets me. And I am, there are people who consider me a master-level Destiny player. A player who is, for all intents and purposes, one of the best. Whether or not you view me in that position is entirely up to you. Sorry, I had to, swallow some air in my neck. And that's in your interpretation. I don't care particularly, but I want to say you shouldn't treat my words as gospel on this topic. Because I'm not the best. I don't win year 2 and forward tournaments. I don't play competitively, if that's what you view as a great Destiny player. I play the game. I try to improve because I have a mentality where I like to improve. And that's about where I lie. So you'll see these Revenant players oftentimes play very aggressively, and there's a couple different builds you'll run into. I believe that the 2 most popular ones are the Glacial Dive Instant Freeze Wombo combo kind of build, and then there's another one which functions a little bit more centered around abusing stacking of slow mechanics, which is like a shuriken and then the backers dodge, in order to get an instant freeze, and then using your shatter damage to combo off of that to get instant kills, or not instant kills, but like a lot of high damage spread all across. So I'll give you an example of this. I have my slow dodge aspect on, and I slow dodge and then shuriken a guy after jumping out of the slow dodge, or like the backers dodge. What this does is it freezes a player because 10 stacks of slowed will it'll turn you into the frozen state, which has the default breakout state, not like the cold snap freeze or the staff freeze, which is about a second and a quarter. And this allows you to, shatter that. And if you tie this with the fragment of fissures or whatever that is, I believe that's the one that gives you the extra shatter damage, then you could possibly freeze other players or even outright get kills like this, because shatter damage is just that good right now. And this is why I'm suggesting, hey, maybe it's the fragment that's the problem and not necessarily the dive itself. So you're like, okay, yeah, I already knew this, so how do I play against this? What's the fair fight against this? Well, you have a couple different approaches in my experience. Number one, it's you can just sit there and lose all the time by trying the W key and shotgun. Alternatively, being a faster player is generally a good approach, but Mask of Backers with this dodge and that combo where you stacking the soul effect, it's super strong. There's a lot that goes for it, and it's hard to outright beat in a one-on-one fight if you're going ability versus ability, because again, the hunter gimmick and the hunter playstyle is often very much about getting these like advantages that lead them to very quick kills. So in an optimal situation for both players, you are never being the hunter in that. That's not happening. You can play back a little bit, which, that's a fair play. But a lot of the time, it's going to boil down to you, unfortunately, and this is going to be a hard pill to swallow even for someone like me who plays for very high kill games a lot of the time, to just disengage or try to find yourself your own advantage. If you catch them out in an open field, it's going to be a lot easier. Coincidentally, it's also going to be a lot easier if you catch them in a surprise I guess, engagement. Like if you open up a door and slide through a doorway in Cauldron, and you catch them with the shoddy when they're just not ready for you. It's going to be kind of like that. I don't remember who the martial artist that suggested it, but they said the best time to strike is when your opponent is striking. That is often the best way to approach some of these engagements, because, you know, there's still about the 1.5-second window where they still have to land that shuriken and they still have to dodge. So you can defeat them in that time, but we're talking CQC, and, you know, things happen in fractions of a millisecond in CQC and Destiny 2, especially with the internet and, you know, weird connections in Wi-Fi Williams. But that's like a whole other topic. So to recap, if you're going to engage them in CQC, your best bet is to kill them by surprise or take them out when they're in the middle of doing their strike. Now, this is just the stacking slow thing. And to recap on the other end of it, it's you can play it a little bit slower, disengage, and try to bait out their abilities, which is generally the safer method and the most appreciated and approved method, because it's just how things have been done ever since Destiny 1. We've always, you know, the game's always been very gameplay bait-centric. Let's look back at Destiny 1. You would use to bait out, you know, Titan Smashes, sticky grenades by, like, peeking a door and sliding away really quickly, shade stepping off of them, etc., because you would just die. And this gameplay is very similar to that, except for you getting frozen is equating to a sticky that hasn't been detonated yet and may never be detonated. And that's kind of something you need to think about. If you didn't play Destiny 1, I feel that you're at a significant disadvantage, but it's not something you can't learn. When I talk about the glacial dive thing, that combo is pretty tough to beat in CQC, and I outright pretty much just choose to not play against that in CQC. It even gets me by surprise so often. So often it gets me, especially in comp, where you have good players who know how to counter bait and, like, you know, read the radar and play the radar and all that good stuff. Your best bet is to just bait it. You have to consciously understand and know, okay, this is a hunter, there's a very good chance that they're going to glacial dive me. What I should do here is kind of give them the fake radar info, back up, let them waste it, and then once that shatter goes out, you have about I don't know how long it is. I want to say like half of a second to a second to slide in, get the shotgun kill, maybe get a couple free taps in with your weapon, and try to clean up that kill. The problem with this is it functions like this is a good on paper 1v1 situation thing, but when there's two of them there and only one of you, what do you do in that situation? My best bet is you can go for a counter freeze realistically, which is a good idea, especially if you're on like warlock with the staff. You know, you can hit him with the Shadebinder staff, the melee ability. I don't know what it's actually called. It's kind of ironic. But my point remains. And this works even better if you're with teammates, because now this guy's wasted his instant kill. Like, he's wasted all of his utility pretty much. He has 2 shurikens, but there's a good chance those have already been spammed. In any case, you can collapse on that player because they're functionally out of the fight. They have no instant kill. If you are playing Stasis properly, you probably have your free instant freeze gimmick, and you can play around that. Even if you aren't, there's still other things, you know. Off the top of my head, you get the wombo combos from Top Dawn with the melee, Celestial Fire, and a nade. You get that same thing on Night Stalker, on Hunter, and so on and so forth. There's a lot you can do. It's gonna be based around you baiting. You running in a doorway and hoping for the free shotgun kill just doesn't happen much these days, because the average skill of a player is just much higher now. And it's worth noting that all of these like tips that I talk about with Revenant generally apply to Behemoth, since Behemoth is very much like kind of a brute force kind of class. Yes, you still get the glacial freezes and you get your utility, but I feel like that class is much more of an entry, go in and ruin someone's day and just hope to keep ruining other people's day, because you get that melee, and that melee is just something else, dude. Holy cow. The best way, and again, the best way to go about this is treat the 2 classes the same. Just expect one to be like 4 times faster. That is the best way I can put it in words right now. I don't know if my brain is just decaying or something, but you can treat them the same, expect one to be at range, and expect one to be in your face in a quarter second. So I'll move on to everyone's favorite smoothie stick, which is Shadebinder. I feel like this is the easiest to kind of read through, since, yeah, it's definitely a lot more balanced. There's no like hyper-aggressive or hyper-defensive bias on it, which I guess adds to a degree of unpredictability. I think that I kind of understand how people are going to play it, because I play the class and I put a lot of time into it and I understand when I should use it. So if you go back and watch my gameplay, you'll notice that a lot of the time I use the staff offensively and a lot of the time I use it defensively. And that's because I generally just have a good understanding of what people are going to do based on the radar and based on, previous habits that I've discovered in the match. When you open a match and you don't know the players, it's very hard to make a judgment off of this, which is where defaults come in very useful, because you can do it and it establishes a groundwork, and you can, I guess, develop a general mental map based on people's reactions. Like, is a hunter going to dodge out of a arc web? Typically they are. If they're smarter, they could just run it out, but that's like a whole other thing. Anyway, so let's talk about the staff. The staff is the thing that people hate the most, specifically the melee ability. The super is quite lackluster if you have the decent ability to use your jump button twice and not stand still. I've got to be honest. If you want to know the counter to the super, just melee them over and over again. Just keep meleeing them. Moving on. So this staff is very tricky because you can have some very smart players use it in a very smart way where they get you every time because they lure you into this false sense of security where you think, haha, this guy's a fool, I'm going to close the gap with a shotgun. Bam, you're frozen around the corner. Before you're even around that corner, they are 10 meters back and you're frozen, and now you're mad because you got frozen because you tried to make a stupid play, they read your play, and you got pooped on. Unfortunately, that's how it is. What you need to understand is this is very similar to the glacial dive combo that everyone's heralding right now as either the killer of the game or the biggest skill gap with Stasis. There's no in between really, but it's that. But it's not such a free kill as much as it is a immobilization. Because now let's talk about it from the perspective of the Shadebinder. If I staff you and you're frozen, but I'm like 10 years away, I've wasted that. That is something I can use to outright counter something that would have been a guaranteed death. So what you need to understand from both perspectives is, again, we're looking at a game of baiting. Whoever's a master of doing this is generally going to win, but you need to functionally understand and fundamentally understand that, hey, I'm going to be using this ability to the best of my ability, and because it's going to open up a free kill for me. And I'm going to talk about that here right now. Let's talk about Destiny players and the mentality of how they approach engagements. Destiny players, or players in any game in general that is player versus player, you are always generally wanting to open up a fight or an engagement or a player versus player encounter with any advantage you can. Because why would you make the work harder? Is it because you want to hold yourself on a high horse? Ultimately, if you're playing for the win, holding yourself on a high horse that's not going to do anything for you. It's like you win, you can be like, haha, I won. But on the other side, if you lose, you're just going to complain and be like, well, they did this. Now, I'm not talking about things like emo peeking and sword peeking, because that's just an oversight in the game. That's like that shouldn't be a thing. But I'm talking about like, oh man, he used an Empowering Rift Revoker to body shot me, or he froze me with his staff. If he wasn't on Shadebinder, he wouldn't have won that. But they are on Shadebinder, and they did win that. And it's because you played foolishly and you misaccounted for what they had. People are always going to take whatever advantage they can. If they don't have an advantage, they're prone to either losing or leaving and trying to find another window when they have an advantage. And this is a mentality that one would be wise to get into, especially at the current state of Destiny, and especially looking at what PvP, or the direction that PvP in the global Destiny sandbox is going as a whole right now. If what would you ever slide into a hand cannon fight with 5 HP? No, you wouldn't, because you're at a significant disadvantage. Would you ever slide to challenge a guy who's got 5 HP and you have full HP with a hand cannon at 20 meters? Yeah, you would, because you have an advantage. Perhaps there's a guy that you don't see at all, and he doesn't know you're there, but you turn and look and like, oh no, this guy's at 20 meters, he's fighting my teammate, and you have the Shadebinder staff. What are you going to do? You're going to use that staff probably, especially if there's like 2 other people next to him and the aspect freeze is going to change to him with the ice flare bolts. This is what I'm talking about. You are generally wanting to open up everything you can with whatever advantage you can. Now, again, I talked in the Patty Cakes video about how you would allocate like a resource and how there's an investment for every engagement, and this is a player-to-player specific thing and a situation-to-situation specific thing, but your investment needs to be appropriate for the situation. Do I really need to use both a cold snap, my staff, and my super all on one player in order to win a fight? I could. It might guarantee me the win, but there's no point to this. It's over-investing in something that you might not have even needed an ability in the first place. And again, I jump back to my example where I'm behind a guy and he has no idea I'm there. I have two options here. I could use my staff, but if it's only one player, it's kind of useless unless I know this guy's been consistently beating me in the primary or the special weapon fight, or maybe he's lagging or something. Or if it's a one-to-one situation, I now get a free shot on him. And I believe that, I know in my heart that I can rely on my primary aim to clean that guy up, get the free kill, and I've invested functionally nothing but time into that. I know that was a long-winded take, and I'm going to try to condense this into, like, I guess the most easy form of expression that I can, if that makes any sense. I feel like a lot of people's shortcomings when playing against Stasis come from old habits where, in the previous iteration of the Crucible from year 2 and year 3, you could very much play kind of reckless and get away with these plays because there was no chance of counterplay if you caught someone by surprise a lot of the time. Whereas now there's this chance of counterplay centric around abilities, and I agree, it feels like a cheap death a lot of the time, and it is frustrating, but you have to admit to yourself, hey, I was kind of out of position. This guy baited me. I lost. And that's a really hard pill to swallow, but it's something you need to understand. People, including yourself, are or will be going to open up every engagement they can with some sort of advantage. If this means that they can throw a grenade and press their C button to get a free kill, they're gonna do that because that's just, they get that back if you let them do that. And see, that's a problem. I feel like a lot of people are also getting baited and they're not used to playing Destiny, like the new Destiny. They're used to playing it like the old Destiny. It's a new game. You have to overcome these shortcomings because if you don't, you're just gonna fail and you're gonna hate the game. That's just how it is. So finally, a grand recap is go into every engagement with an advantage. If you feel like they're going to use their advantage, you need to bait that out. You need to visually understand that this player does not have their instant freeze or anything like that. And this is provided that like they're on stasis, but it could be said for everything else. Again, Celestial Fire is incredibly free, and I used to have to bait the hell out of this. And moving on from that, you need to understand the concept of resource allocation and investment per engagement. I tried to make this very playstyle neutral as I could without actually, telling you how to do your job as a playstyle player. But I guess here's a little small section where I'll iterate in that because I almost rendered this video and I thought to myself, I didn't really elaborate what I meant by that. So you can still play very aggressively, it's just you playing aggressively has an extremely high risk attached to it because you only have so many resources, like I said, you can allocate or invest into a single engagement, and this can often lead to your death promptly because other people also have resources. I think that Stasis most benefits the neutral player who can both, again, bounce from aggressive to defensive very quickly and very fluidly. You can also play really passively, but I feel like playing passively is it's really stale, and it just ends up with you getting stomped a little bit more than not. And when I say defensively, I mean defensively, not passively. Defensively means you probably have the majority of the map control, like your team has a home flag in B, and you're defending against the enemy pushing to the B flag. This is what I mean by that. When I say passive, it means you're AFK in the spawn trying to kill people with pulse rifles, but instead you're just getting your team supered by a Shadebinder. If you play aggressive, you just really need to have really good investment, really good radar reading, and a very, 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 very good understanding of risk assessment. That's probably all I have to say about that, since a lot of people like the whole W. And if there's anything more that I could say, I would have to say it's experience. You're gonna have to learn how to read the signs that, lead to you successfully baiting out utility from the enemy. Unfortunately, most of the best players have lost more than they won, and myself included. And it might take a little bit of a blow to the ego, but that's just how it is. And if you kind of listen to this video, it'll be good. But I feel like watching the gameplay in it will clue you in a little bit as to how I execute Shadebinder. And in doing so, I play Shadebinder in a manner specifically centered around countering other people's stasis, any case. And I would heavily recommend it. I wish I was more creative and a better editor and stuff like that, so that I could, piece together this compilation of clips that would make sense as the voiceover is going. But I'm just not that gifted yet. I've got to put more time into practicing my video editing skills and compilation skills. But that's about all I have to say. All in all, I think I've said everything I have worth to say, and I'll probably come up with something, a little more useful or like easier explained as soon as I upload the video and it's live, and then I'm mad. But that's a whole other thing. What I just really want to, I guess, if I can be impressionable at all with my modest following and my modest skill in the game, all I can say is give it a fair try. Discard the scrub mentality of, oh no, I can't play the same way anymore. Give it 100 hours. 100 hours in the Crucible. If you still don't like it, form feedback. Don't complain, form feedback. Talk about what you don't like. Talk about what you would like to see changed. That is my challenge to you if you are currently a Stasis hater or you feel like Stasis is ruining the game for you. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this was of some use to some people. I really am annoyed at the mentality of people are like, Stasis is killing the game, because I don't feel like it is. I feel like this is an overreaction and doomsaying by the Destiny community, and I really don't like that, because I like this game. In any case, again, I appreciate you guys for watching. Hope this was some use. This was the dude, man, the guy himself. Peace.